So bullying is a big problem, and we have way too much of it here in the United States, and yet being bullied as a teenager launched my career. The fists, the humiliations, the threats started a domino effect. I started studying Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling, boxing, and it led me to Las Vegas, the fight capital of the world, where I worked for the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And as the Ultimate Fighting Championship, I got to interview hundreds of elite cage fighters, raw, unfiltered, fascinating minds. And the more I picked their brains, the more one pearl of wisdom surfaced again and again. Fighting is 90% mental. Now, the fighting gene is wired into each of us. We all have fights, and at some point, life's going to try to hit you upside the head with a steel chair. It's going to poke you in the eye. It's going to try to bust you in the mouth. And the best solution to that usually is from the neck up. And so we might all ask ourselves, what am I doing on a daily basis to exercise my mind tool? And it reminds me, a few years back, there was a gentleman named Emanuel Stewart. Emanuel Stewart is a legendary boxing trainer. He's dead now. Legendary boxing trainer, 40-plus world champions. I'd waited a long time to get him. I've got him on the phone. 20 minutes in, I ask him the most important question. All the world champions are worked with. What's the one trait, the one characteristic they all had? And Stewart's a lot more soft-spoken than I am. Real soft-spoken guy. He said, a big ego. They all had a big ego. And I wanted to leap out of my chair. I'm in the UFC offices by myself. I wanted to leap out because it had confirmed a conviction I had for years. I had trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu 9 years, 3,000 plus hours to get a black belt. I interviewed 20,000 plus people as a journalist, as a writer, and kept all these high performers. I kept seeing, man, could it be that a big ego gets a bad rap? Right? Could it be? And so I have kind of a soft spot. I've competed in hundreds of tournaments. I know what it takes. I know what it takes mentally. And I have a soft spot for, say, someone like Ronda Rousey. Career didn't end that well. A lot of people laughed and mocked her, but I get it. I get why she said, she had this angry swag persona. I get why she faced the reporters and said, look, you guys call me cocky. You call me arrogant. But the thing is, how dare you think I should think less of myself? Do you know what it takes to go out there? Cristiano Ronaldo, the reporters asked him, are you the best soccer player in the world? He said, I'm not the best now, I'm the best ever. Dan Gable, Mr. Intensity, Mr. Wrestling icon. Hardest sport in the world, arguably, wrestling. He said, some wrestle without great skill, none wrestle without pride. ESPN ranks #1 athlete of all time in any sport. And it's the guy with the biggest mouth and the biggest ego, Muhammad Ali. Maybe a connection there. So you think, I know that we have to be careful that you have this big ego freight train and it's destined to crash and burn, and we all see that, and that's in our head, right? So obviously it's wise to hedge that ego with humility. And the problem with humility is we've done a poor job defining what humility is. How do you aim for something? How do you do something that's so poorly defined? Humility, being introverted, no offense if you're introverted, it's not humility. Being shy is not humility. Not doing something because you're scared, what do other people think, is not humility. Feigning humility, faking it, repressing it is not humility. Humility requires the presence of, I know my power. I'm aware of the power I have. I'm confident. That's that's a starting point for humility. Humility is when you're in a fight and you're the nail and you fight as hard as you can, you would if you were the hammer. So humility is, you're a black belt. You're an expert. And you humble yourself. You look at things through a white belt rookie's eyes. And you realize how many things you don't know in the universe. Humility is this incredible freedom. It is this, it's not being concerned with what people think, so you're just free to be. And humility, to me, I think nobody gets to pick their parents. Nobody gets to pick the zip code, right? Nobody gets to pick, I want to live in Beverly Hills or versus the war zone in Iraq or Syria. Nobody gets to pick that. Humility is an awareness of a oneness that I see other people and I recognize, that would be me if. That would be me if I was born on the same birth date, to the same parents, in the same zip code, in the same environment, with the same genes. You connect more people. You realize that would be me if. There, but for the grace of God, go I. And so I think with this ego spectrum, this ego continuum, I have a mathematical equation for it, and it's C equals BE plus HU. Confidence equals big ego plus humility. And you're constantly, if you're doing it right, it's like this surf thing I have where you're constantly trying to it's a tightrope. You're going to get tested. And I think of the ego as this mansion in your mind, right? This big, vast mansion. It's got 100 rooms in it. And so many people spend time in 3 or 4 or 5 of the rooms in a safe. I'm humble. I'm here. I've got a big ego. I don't back it up with hard work or anything, but I'm here. And yap, yap, yap. Instead of getting out and saying, I got to go to the whole spectrum. I got to play with this. Don't just follow the narrative. Big ego is bad. Because I can show you high performers, they ain't getting there. Austin Rivers in the NBA said, look, I'm cocky. I got a chip on my shoulder, and I wouldn't be in the NBA if I didn't have that. And he's probably right. And I grew up in, 7 different families, 11 schools, and trust me, nobody volunteers sometimes to be your biggest cheerleader. Nobody does. When nobody volunteers, guess who it falls on to do that? To get you out of spots, it falls on you. So I understand the fighters, the high performers who say, look, this vociferous voice, why do I need it? If you're there, I've competed at American Nationals, I've competed at World Championships, I've been behind the stage at the UFC, and I've seen the fear that encircles even the best of the best. The doubts, why am I here? What if I lose? What if I get hurt? What if this? What if that? You have all these things racing through your head, and you're like, one vociferous voice. You have all these why nots, all these what could go wrong. And then you have this one great why that says, to all the 10,000 why nots, just goes in there and just wrecks shop and says, no. We're taking the mountain. We're doing what we said we're going to do, and that's it. And you're communicating that. Like an inner Ali, you're commanding yourselves, this is what you're going to do. We're not turning back now. That's the voice you need, that vociferous voice. And I'd say, to have that voice, to have that one great why, you need to know your purpose. That's the root of it. What's your purpose? And people try to identify their purpose, and they say, oh, well, what do I love to do? What makes me happy? What would I do for free? That doesn't work for me, and I think in general that's a bad way to go about it. I think a better way to go about it is determining your purpose. What would I suffer for? What would I bleed for? What would I limp for? What would I crawl for? What would I die for? Some people do. Some people are willing to die or shave years off their life to, I'm going to do X. And they want to do it, and humanity benefits from that. So that's the kind of voice that we're talking about needing. And a lot of people, so many people, we just had a guy a couple weeks ago committed suicide, a famous trainer in the fight sports. Devastating. I was writing my speech. I couldn't write. So many people are deflated and they're depressed and they're lonely and they feel unworthy. And you're like, what do you do to someone that feels that deflated? A beautiful person, smart person, talented person. What do you do? Well, one thing you might do is inflate. You might be like, you got to pump them up, got to build them up, right? Build yourself up. You build yourself up with the thing, it's free. Whether you're broke, you're rich, it's free. It's your voice, it's the space between your ears. It's free, man. It's the one thing you got. No matter everything goes wrong around you, you got that. If you can use those weapons, those mind tools. And so I see so much of that deflation that is out there right now. And I think, why are people denying and depriving themselves? There's weapons there. There's mind tools. Even the ego thing. Reach for it. There's weapons out there for it. Deny and deprive yourself. You go to the grave with great music in you. You scratch the surface of your talent. And guess what? Denying and depriving society of your benefits and your maximum contributions. That's what people do. You're not just the victim when you deny and deprive. Society is the victim. And so some of these big ego people, they roam where others dare not roam. Some of them deserve respect. And even if they don't back it up, at least they're trying. They're saying, look, I want to squeeze everything out of me. I want to do that. So I would say now, if a person feels deflated, you might reach for those 2 mental superpowers. You might reach for them. You might explore them. Get out there in the dimensions. Divorce yourself from just the negative stereotypes. Play around with it. Explore them. Exercise them. And I hope you'll find, if you are in that deflated place and you do dare exaggerate and amplify, what I hope you'll find is that, what I found is that, doubling down on humility is always a beautiful thing. It's always a good idea. But betting big on a big ego can move mountains too. Thank you.